the City of Tucson. I conduct rezoning hearings on behalf of the mayor and council and make findings of fact, which I put into a written report along with my recommendation, which I then send along to mayor and council for their consideration and for their final decision. My report will be based on the information submitted to me, which includes the rezoning application, the staff report, all written approvals and protests, all correspondence, and the testimony given at tonight's public hearing. I will also include in the record all documents submitted to me up to the close of the public hearing. A recording of tonight's testimony is being made. If requested, a transcript will be prepared. With that in mind, when I call on you to testify, I would ask you to please speak clearly and begin your testimony by stating your name and your address. And if you would please spell your last name as well, that would help the transcriptionist very much. The process goes like this. First, I complete a preliminary report within 5 working days after the close of the public hearing. Then I prepare a final report. The final report will be issued 2 weeks after the close of the public hearing. For those of you who wish to receive a copy of the preliminary report and are not a listed party on the case, please send an email to tucsonrezoning@tucsonaz.gov. Again, tucsonrezoning@tucsonaz.gov, or call the Planning and Development Services Department. A copy of my final report will be available from the Planning and Development Services Department, and I send the final report along to the mayor and council. Tonight's public hearing will proceed in the following manner. I will open the public hearing and ask Mr. John Beal of the Planning and Development Services Department to give a brief presentation of the case. After Mr. Beal's presentation, I will ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to make his or her presentation. I will then ask to hear from anyone in the audience who wishes to speak. I will start by calling on anyone who has sent in an email request stating they wish to testify tonight, and then I will open it up and call on other people in the audience who wish to speak. I would ask that you please wait for me to call on you before you unmute your device and testify, so we will have a clear record of who is speaking. Since I cannot have any contact or communication with anyone involved in this case outside of this public hearing, I would invite you to speak tonight if you would like to do so. After everyone in attendance has had an opportunity to speak, I will offer the applicant or the applicant's representative a chance to respond to any of the concerns or issues that were brought up tonight. So with those ground rules in mind, let's get started. Our first case on the docket is case SE 2016 TEP Vine Substation. Mr. Beal, would you like to present the case?
Yes, Mr. Reno. This is a request by Tucson Electric Power Company, TEP, for approval of an electric gas insulated substation as a special exception land use in the R2 zone. The project site is approximately 1.6 acres in size and located on North Vine Avenue near its intersection with East Lee Street and adjacent to the North Ring Road, which is a private roadway serving Banner Campus, just northwest of Speedway Boulevard and Campbell Avenue. The revised preliminary development plan, PDP, indicates that 1.6 acres are to be occupied by the 138 kilovolt GIS substation equipment and enclosed with a decorative masonry brick wall at 13.5 feet in height. The proposed Vine substation is one component of the larger Kino de Damas Petrie transmission line project. A distribution system use of this type in the R2 zone is subject to the UDC requirements and requires approval through a zoning examiner special exception procedure. A public hearing before the zoning examiner is required. The zoning examiner renders a decision to grant the use with or without conditions or to deny the use. The design review board also reviews the project for design review and recommendation, which they have done. The proposed special exception is consistent with Plan Tucson and the University Area Plan and in compliance with performance criteria of UDC 4.9.11A, subject to compliance with the attached revised preliminary conditions. Approval of the special exception land use in the R2 zone is appropriate. As of today's date, there have been 2 approvals and 29 protests. Protests by location outside of 150 feet is 4. Within 150 feet is 1. Does not trigger any supermajority. That's only 5% for lot coverage and 0.6% for area. We have a letter from Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association, which is a protest. And of these forms, there are unsigned letters and emails received by PDSD are represented in the total approvals and protests. 24 emails and letters of protests were submitted to PDSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to be heard?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Urino. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Ms. Sylvan, thank you very much. Please proceed.
And I do have a presentation. I think I can share my screen. Famous last words. Okay. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
I will be when you turn the page, yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, it should say Vine Substation on the front. Are you seeing that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Carrie Sylvan, S-I-L-V-Y-N, 5983 East Grant Road. I am representing TEP in this substation request. I'd like to introduce some of the other team members who are here in case either you or you want us to address any of the public comments that are more complicated relative to technology and TEP than I can handle. Renee Darling is here, who's the transmission and distribution supervisor for TEP. Brian Pugh, the senior environmental and land use planner with TEP. Alberto Quinones, the substation engineering supervisor. Donovan Sandoval, distribution and planning engineer. Adriana Martinez, the senior local affairs representative. Kevin Letendre, who's from Somas Engineering, and Robin Large, who's a senior land planner with my office. I can send all of those names to Mr. Beal as well for the transcription, if that would be helpful.
That would be great. Thank you.
You got it. The agenda for tonight for my presentation, I want to give you a little bit of a brief background of the larger project that is a lot of the public comments that you're hearing that are not necessarily related directly to this request, but are, I think, important for context. And then focus in on this substation request in the SELU, special exception land use, and then touch on neighborhood outreach. And then obviously we'll happy to answer any of your questions or if there are questions after the public hearing. As I go through the presentation, I will try to separate the issues being voiced in the community that are really related to the line siting process, which is under the Arizona Corporation Commission and is separate from the SELU, and focus in on the special exception land use request. Staff indicated where the site is located. This may or may not be helpful as an aerial. It's west of Banner and the Ring Road, between the Ring Road and Vine. It is in the North University neighborhood, which is not a historic neighborhood. It is south of Jefferson Park neighborhood. There's a U of A salvage and recycling property directly to our north, as well as some of the homes that are being used for U of A offices that are buffers between our northern boundary and Leicester, which is where the neighborhood, the single family residential really starts. The other surrounding uses to the south are additional substations. TEP has its 46 kV substation, and then U of A has its own substation as well. So similar uses right on the block. The Ring Road and Banner, as I said, is to the east, and Vine and North University are to the west. The property is currently used by U of A as a facilities maintenance and repair office and shops. As you can see, it's a busy use with limited screening on the perimeter, which I will show you in a minute. It is 100% impervious surface. It is all asphalt and buildings, which is important when we talk about our proposed use. So our proposed use is an unmanned substation without the traffic and less intense to surrounding uses with better screening. One of the things I want to point out is when we redevelop for the substation, only 20% of the ground will be impervious surface. So 80% is going to be pervious, and that's a great modification for the drainage in the area. Want to touch on the larger project for just a minute. I'm getting, are others getting feedback? I can continue over it, but.
So would everyone please mute their device until I call on you to speak? Mr. Wilkins, I think you need to mute your device. Thank you very much. Please proceed, Ms. Sylvan.
Thank you. TEP is developing plans for a new 138 kilovolt transmission line to strengthen reliability for residential and commercial customers in central Tucson and help satisfy the growing energy needs in our community. Transmission lines link to substations that change the voltage of electricity facilities from the transmission levels to the distribution levels to safely deliver electric service to area customers. TEP currently serves the central area with a 46 kilovolt subtransmission system that includes equipment that's nearing the end of its useful life, and it really needs to be upgraded to respond to demands. By constructing this 138 kilovolt system in the area, TEP can avoid overload conditions that damage equipment and cause outages or low voltages for customers. There is a separate process, as I alluded to before, for environmental studies and public outreach to identify alternative routes for the line siting of the actual 138 kilovolt lines and poles. The final Kino to Damas Petrie transmission line route will be determined in the next couple of years by the Arizona Corporation Commission after extensive outreach. The ACC has the jurisdiction related to those actual line sightings where the transmission lines will be located. It's not really in the purview, and it's not part of our request for the SELU. I mention this because a lot of the comments that you've heard in emails and other public comments that are part of the record are related to those lines, and that's not part of this process. The new substation we are here to talk about today will interconnect TEP's planned Kino to Damas Petrie transmission line project, and that's the relationship. Focusing on the Vine substation, I've already talked to you about the purpose of a substation. It will provide several benefits to the area, resolving overloading and capacity concerns, which can cause power outages, as I mentioned, expands capacity for renewable energy, services the growing energy needs, including increased peak energy demands, improving electric reliability by adding redundancy, allowing TEP to deliver energy from more than one direction. As I said, replacing the aging infrastructure, including the substation equipment on the 46 kV, which is scheduled for replacement within the next 5 years. There's also land use benefits focusing in on this 1.6 acres. It's a much less intense land use than is currently there. It's an unmanned substation. We're proposing a 13.5-foot decorative masonry wall as opposed to the open fencing that's there now. And again, that 80% reduction in impervious surface. TEP is not responsible and doesn't control where U of A relocates its current use. Our focus is on this 1.6 acre substation use. The other issue that I want to touch on is the GIS, the gas insulated substation. Again, this technology is regulated by other agencies, but it's been a large part of some of the public comments and concerns. These systems are appropriate in urban settings where land is less available. Tucson does have 2 substations that are GIS. One of them is downtown. It's been there for 10 years. It's TEP operated and it's had no issues, no leaks, no concerns. The other is actually that University of Arizona GIS substation that's 2 properties to our south. That is also same technology. It's been there for about 6 years and no issues. Safety is an enormous priority for these kinds of substations because they are in urban settings. The key is to enclose the energized equipment, and that's the safety concerns that are brought forward. So how it works, it does use sulfur hexafluoride gas. It's a heavy, inert, non-toxic, and incombustible gas. It is harmless to humans and animals when used in the manner that TEP and other utilities use it. It's only a greenhouse gas if released into the air, and we do not use it that way. There are significant safety and security measures in place. The byproduct of the arcing is hazardous when it encounters moisture only because it's in a hermetically sealed chamber. That's the major safety precaution. TEP does take safety very seriously. There are tests, inspections, and monitoring of it 24/7. We have provided studies and a lot of additional collateral material on the SF6. It's available on TEP's websites. I believe the websites were in the materials we copied you on. We put in the application the materials that we provided to the neighbors. And again, the use of this technology is not a part of this request, but we've been very clear in wanting to make sure we're answering all questions, even if it's tangential to the SELU. We already talked about the location. Go ahead.
If I may interrupt with 2 questions on that piece, Ms. Sylvan. So who does regulate the environmental aspects of the gas insulated technology?
I might ask Brian or Renee to give you the exact agencies.
Okay. And while we're waiting on that, will any of those agencies be required to approve this substation before it becomes operational? So those are my 2 questions on that piece.
Okay.
This is Brian Pugh from TEP. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The SF6 gas is basically is not really regulated, but is reported to the EPA. That if there were ever to be a leak or a loss, that you would have to report that to the EPA. Now, we can get with our substation, but I don't believe that they actually have any authority in approving the use of SF6 in a substation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pugh. Please continue, Ms. Sylvan.
Thanks. Thank you, Brian. So we've already talked about the surrounding, what we're near. The zoning is R2. The existing zoning really reflects the fact that the university has owned and is exempt from zoning in a lot of this area. The existing uses on the property, I said, include a warehouse, engine repair, outdoor storage, office, parking. The exterior fencing is an open fencing on vine. And again, 100% is impervious surface. We already talked about directly to the north is the U of A salvage and recycling, and I only point that out because that use comes right up to that northern property line, and there really is, and then there's fencing, and it's opaque around the outside of that. So from the north, you can't really see the northern property line of the proposed project. Or the existing use, as the case may be. The east is the ring road and the driveway. South are the same uses, similar uses to what we have. And west is really the site that has the public right-of-way and the North University neighborhood directly to the west, and then Jefferson Park further to the north.
We got kicked out of the call got dropped. I'm back in.
The project that we're proposing is on this 1.6 acres. It's the 138 GIS substation. It's all the equipment will be located inside of the 13.5-foot decorative masonry wall. There is a portion of the system, it's noted in the darker gray, that has a canopy with a gantry crane. The crane is inside of the roof canopy. So a lot of people misunderstood that there was a roof canopy and then a larger crane, and that's not the case. The crane is inside the roof canopy. That will be no taller than 25 feet, which is the height that's permitted in R2. So we're not making any requests. There's nothing before you tonight relative to any additional height on that canopy. There is to the wall, which I'll talk about in a minute. Right now, 100% of the water hitting the site cannot penetrate. After this development, 80% will be able to it will be pervious and can seep into the site. The next phase of this project is really when we'll be designing with the city the rest of the drainage, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. The electric utility distribution is permitted in R2 with approval of this special exception land use. Our application goes through the criteria in significant detail. I want to touch on the wall setbacks, landscaping, and height of the wall. So the wall we are proposing on all sides of the project at 13.5 feet. That is to match the U of A's existing wall and to provide the required security. And again, there's a pretty thorough explanation in our application. The code indicates a 10-foot wall is permitted. We're presenting to you tonight a higher wall, again, that matches the U of A wall as well. It's decorative masonry. It's better for safety and screening. It's also consistent with that wall further to the south. The DRB did review the wall and discussed and recommended approval at the 13.5 feet tall, again, to provide some consistency along Vine. For the setbacks on Vine, the wall will be 20 feet from the property line with landscaping and a sidewalk, which does not currently exist. So if you can see the gray stripe on the plan, that is the proposed future sidewalk. Because of the uses on the north, south, and east, and for safety reasons, we're proposing the wall on the actual property line. On the north, a setback would only benefit a salvage and recycling yard. Nobody can see into that area except for a split second on Vine and on the Ring Road. So there's no reason to put it there. On the east, it's a private driveway and the back of house for Banner and the parking garage. On the south, it's the same use, and part of what we want to make sure of is we're not creating a no man's land between two walls with 20 feet for safety purposes. We really need to make sure this is not an accessible area and don't create that no man's or no woman's land. So TEP needs the full 1.6 acres for the substation, and it's safer to have the wall on the perimeter. Again, we're pulling it back on Vine for obvious reasons. Landscaping.
Ms. Sylvan, what
Yes.
are the safety considerations that make it better for TEP to build on the lot line on the north, east, and south and not setback?
On the north and the south, it really creates an area where people there are going to be small areas, sort of what I call no man's lands, where people can come in and move around in between. In one case, it would be in between two walls where people can hide. And in the salvage yard, it's a similar situation. Over on the east, that is really kind of the back of house for the Ring Road. There are no other landscape buffers up and down the Ring Road, and having the wall directly on the property line, which is right next to the Ring Road, is better for controlling. I don't believe we're encouraging pedestrian access and other things in those areas, and allows us to monitor it a little bit better.
Thank you.
The for the landscaping, as I said, we're proposing that 20-foot landscaping on Vine. The DRB reviewed that and asked that the landscaping have a hardy and more lasting understory plant material. New trees be located to maximize shading on the sidewalk, and existing viable plants be preserved if possible. We are 100% good with that condition. I think it's condition number 7 in the list of conditions. The height, the only height we're requesting is the additional height of the wall, and we'll show you a cross section of that in a minute. Somebody had mentioned a concern about the canopy and the gantry crane, and again, those are within the R2 zoning requirements, so nothing's being requested here to increase that height. Pursuant to the code, no storage or service yard is permitted either associated with this use, and we're not doing that, so we meet that final section. Want to touch on drainage for a minute because that was brought up in a number of the letters. I already mentioned a few million times that it's currently 100% impervious, and all water actually immediately leaves the site. There is no retention detention. So after construction, only 20% will be impervious. So 80% will be pervious, which is compacted aggregate. That in and of itself is going to improve the conditions. You won't have the water hitting and immediately going. The next phase of this development, when we do the development package, our engineers will get into some more detail and work with the city engineers to determine how and if there's additional water that needs to be controlled when it comes off the site. There were a couple people who suggested a condition that weep holes be required in the wall. Weep holes are one way to manage the release of on-site flows, but there are others. And we would like the opportunity for our engineers to be able to work with the city during the DP process to deal with this issue with all of the tools available to them. So there might be weep holes, but there could be other ways to manage. Again, and then for flows that leave the west side of the property, those will have some additional retention and water harvesting in the landscape buffer yard. I want to walk you through a couple of quick photo simulations. We presented these as well to the design review board. These are looking both north and south down Vine, and it's meant to show the streetscape modifications. As I mentioned, the line sighting through the Arizona Corporation Commission has a few options in front of it. And so what we did was we provided 2 sets of these to acknowledge the 2 different options depending on what ACC decides. So what you'll see is a modification in these drop structures between the 2 options. Again, that's not something that's part of this request. It will be determined by the ACC when they do the line sighting. So if
I just want to make sure I understand that last part, Ms. Sylvan.
Yes.
So which photo simulation, the photo simulation photograph would show those taller drop structures?
Yep, I'll walk you through them when we go through each of them. So this is sorry, did I?
Please go ahead.
If the ACC chooses the route A or B that's in front of them right now, then these 2 drop structures would be located on Vine outside of the substation wall. So, and we'll show you the other one in just a minute. So this is the existing condition right now of the property. You can see the open fencing with some vegetation. There's some more mature vegetation down to the south. This would be the new wall, the 13-foot, and it would have it's going to be designed similarly to the U of A's wall. The gate, there will be 2 gates on Vine. And this, you can see the canopy, and again, the crane is underneath that canopy, which from this vantage point, as you can see, what is truly visible is the banner garage, which is what's back behind there. This is the same option, so you can see those two drop structures. And this is looking north. This is actually the existing TEP U of A, I'm sorry, the TEP GIS 46 kV. So the new site is actually a little bit further to the north, and you can see where there's opportunities, and they're more significant when you go further to the north, where the open fencing allows you to see in. That wall will now match the wall. It actually, as the Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association pointed out, it matches the wall over near the U of A substation, which is a little bit further to the south. So if the ACC chooses Route D, there will only be one new drop structure, which is located right here. So that's the main difference in these visuals. Again, it's the same condition here. You'll also see the sidewalk that's being added, the landscaping. There will be some water harvesting in the landscaping as well. And this is, sorry, I need to not use. This is, if it's Route D, again, there's the new drop structure right here, and that's looking to the north. These are two other visuals that we showed to the DRB that weren't in our application. This is the actual wall from the U of A that we will be designing to, and this is an elevation of that. We also were asked to show the gates. These gates have been specifically designed for security purposes by TEP. So as you can see, when you're standing right in front of the gate, they can be seen through. That's in large part for security purposes, but the second you move to one side or the other and the higher degree of that angle, those views are skewed. And again, it's meant to balance the view and allow drive-by monitoring of the site as well. Again, it's an unmanned station, so we're not expecting the gates to be used any more than 1 to 2 times per month for maintenance. And then extreme circumstances, obviously, we'll have to do what we have to do. Want to touch on the public outreach, and then I'm done. The special exception land use, we had our November neighborhood meeting, and we did some pretty significant follow-up after that meeting. It's summarized in our meeting summary, including correspondence after the neighborhood meeting to clarify and answer a number of questions. There were some questions about the electric and magnetic fields, and we made a commitment to do 3 different time periods, doing measurements at 3 different time periods. One of those was this last December, and so by the time we turned in the application, we have our Appendix D to the application is the start of the EMF measurements, and the December measurements are in there. We have committed to 2 more times that we will take those measurements. We will comply with the city noise ordinance. That was something that was asked after the meeting in April, and we responded to that constituent the next day. There were also a lot of questions about the SF6 technology, and although it's not part of this review, we made a lot of that information available and all the links to the articles. The actual line siting through the ACC has had 5 working group meetings since October of 2019, and that included a lot of the surrounding neighborhoods and neighborhood associations, as well as 3 open houses. And then the neighborhood associations in this area, we were asked, TEP had 4 additional meetings. Those meetings discussed not just the line siting, but did discuss the substation as well. There's a lot of updated information, and TEP is keeping that information updated on the website and is being responsive to questions that are asked. I do want to point out, Mr. Beal mentioned the protests and the number, you've seen the number of comments that have come in. Many of those comments are outside of the immediate area, which reflects those comments, because most of them are about the line siting and not necessarily relevant to the substation. We've also, TEP has been keeping elected officials and others informed as this project has moved forward. In conclusion, this SCLU request is for a distribution use in the R2. The use fits in this area. It's surrounded by similar and even some more intense uses. It's less intense than the existing use on the property with better screening, enhanced landscaping on Vine, and what will be better drainage. We're meeting code as to the height and the other requirements. The DRB recommended approval with the additional condition. We're comfortable with all of the conditions in the staff report, and we respectfully request your approval. And we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple of other questions before I take other speakers. So I think you said that the ACC line sighting division will be made in the next couple of years. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
All right. And then I understand what's in front of me and what's not in front of me, I think. So are there other routes beside Route A and B and D? Because you showed me a photo simulation on what would it look like at the proposed substation if A or B were chosen, and you showed me what it would look like if D were chosen. Are there other
Tucson Electric Power? I think I'm in the damn wrong meeting.
Yeah, I think Renee is available to answer that. She's doing the line sighting process.
Okay.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
So A, B, and D are the only alternatives remaining. The others have been removed from consideration.
Okay.
And also wanted to correct Carrie that we intend to file our application to the ACC in August with a hearing in September. So likely a decision would be made by the ACC early in 22.
Thank you. And for the record, that was Renee Darling, D-A-R-L-I-N-G with TEP.
Yes,
one other question before I call on others to testify. So whichever route is selected by the ACC, this substation would be required no matter where the line sighting piece comes out? Is that correct or not correct, or is it not a yes or no?
That is correct. The answer is yes, that is correct.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We had several people who emailed in and asked to speak, so I'll start with Colleen Nichols. Ms. Nichols, would you like to speak? Ms. Nichols, Colleen Nichols, are you present? Okay, we'll come back to Ms. Nichols later. I had a request to speak from Jean Calhoun. Ms. Calhoun?
Yes, thank you, John. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. And start with your name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, my name is Jean Calhoun. My address is 1844 North Vine Avenue. And my husband and I own and live in the house that's at the northeast corner of Vine and Leicester, just a half block north of the proposed substation. So we are in the historic district of Jefferson Park. And I would like to speak in opposition to TEP's request for a special exception land use permit. Our concerns regarding the substation include, number one, the site location. So first, this seems like an inappropriate site for a substation that's really an industrial facility, 3 times the size of the existing 46 kilovolt substation that is currently there. It's in the heart of a residential neighborhood that's currently zoned R2. So we would request that alternative locations in a more industrial area be considered. And of course, we understand that the substation is required for the increase in transmission of electricity. However, I don't believe that there's any indication of any other sites that have been considered by TEP. Unfortunately, TEP did purchase the site prior to reaching out to the public, rather than discussing the options with the public in advance. So that really does appear disingenuous to have a public hearing after the purchase of that site. And I guess I would like to hear from TEP what other sites they have considered and why they have not considered sites, say, on Campbell or Speedway or some other zoned areas that are not in the heart of a residential area. So that's the first concern, is the site location. The second concern is the size of the substation, which goes to the viewshed impacts. Since the height of the canopy, the metal canopy, and the crane will loom 11.5 feet above the proposed 13.5 foot wall encircling the site. Yes, indeed, 25 foot is a height requirement of a residential area, but that's envisioning that what you'll see in that 25 feet will be residential houses, not an industrial facility. So the viewshed impacts from our house is like half a block. We see this site every day. We can see it from where we are right now. We can see the current site. So that viewshed impacts are a concern. Then we really do have also some safety concerns with respect to the increase in electrical power. In the event of an accident, right, being in the heart of the industrial area, in heart of the residential area is problematic. And then the use of the sulfur hexafluoride gas, which is a major greenhouse gas. It really is the greatest. It's the greenhouse gas that is the most potent in existence right now. And so in the event of a leak, which could happen, it may not have happened yet, but it certainly could happen. That's problematic. In addition, exposure of that gas to an arc chemically breaks down SF6, which can produce S2F10, which is a highly toxic gas, which was actually considered as a potential chemical warfare agent in World War II. So in the event of an accident, this is why we have industrial zoning. Industrial facilities are problematic in the heart of residential areas where people live. And as I understand, if that were to happen, if such a, it's a disulfur decafluoride, highly toxic gas, if that were to be released, it doesn't produce any warning because you can't smell it, etc. So that is a concern we'd like to have addressed. We also have noise concerns with respect to the transmission, both the lines and the substation itself. And we are curious about the night lighting that is going to be provided. Currently, we have very low night lighting, which is very good for night views of the sky. And we would hope that there would not be any intrusive lighting. Obviously, we're concerned about the decrease in property values that would be a result of from a huge substation. That definitely is going to decrease property values in this area. I think that it is absolutely related to the proposed transmission lines. The substation, wherever the substation is, there's going to need to be transmission from that substation. So in the event this substation location is approved, then indeed transmission lines above ground is all I saw in the photos that were presented by TEP. They did not present any photos that showed that they were even considering underground lines. So obviously the substation is related to the transmission line. Obviously the different agencies, the ACC versus the city of Tucson, two different agencies to approve those two different things, but they are definitely related, and the impact would be major impact in the event that the substation is constructed in the neighborhood. I think all of the neighbors are pretty insistent, in as is the several of our city council members, that these transmission lines be routed underground. And if you saw the 1 to 2 foot, what she called drop structures outside the wall, those transmission poles are exceedingly invasive in a neighborhood that's a residential neighborhood. So I do appreciate all the landscaping elements that TEP has suggested that they would do, as well as the increase of the height of the brick wall that they're proposing. I think those are all good things to include. And obviously they've thought through this, but it is a little concerning, or very concerning, that at this point it seems like a done deal. And I was just curious whether the city has before denied a special exception land use permit. So that would be the end of my comments. Those are my concerns, John. I really appreciate your allowing us to speak to this issue, and TEP, we really appreciate TEP coming to the community and presenting this as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Calhoun. Colleen Nichols?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Please start with your name and address. Thank you.
It's Colleen Nichols, Nichols. I live at 1236 East Linden Street. I am currently the president of Jefferson Park Neighborhood Association and a representative on the TEP Community Working Group. I've lived in Jefferson Park for over 40 years. You have received many letters from me, or quite a few letters from me representing the neighborhood. Ms. Sylvan did address some of the issues, but I'm just going to repeat some of them. We are a neighborhood of over 900 homes, a few apartment buildings, 3 churches, a nursing home and rehab center, and a school which serves infants through 8th grade students. We are a thriving, involved community of homeowners and renters, and we're a National Historic District as well as a neighborhood preservation zone. Our neighborhood sits at the very northern edge of the proposed Vine substation, as Ms. Calhoun just remarked, and will bear the brunt should the project move forward. The location of the substation is a poor choice at best. We were informed of the TE project in September 2019, by which time the land had already been acquired. There was really no discussion with the neighborhoods or soliciting input about other possible locations. There seemed to be no thought on the part of TEP about the devastating impact this project would have on so many neighborhoods in our city. Regarding the required public meeting about the substation, Ms. Sylvan did mention it. There was one very tightly controlled virtual hearing held on November 16th, which basically allowed for no public discourse. It was simply questions and then answered by TEP. The current proposed location brings with it a host of concerns. The safety in such a densely populated residential area, and adjacent to a large hospital. Again, we're mentioning the use of SF6 gas in a facility that is so large, the drainage and flooding issues into the neighborhood, noise, and most importantly, the view corridor. Because if the substation is approved and remains, 75-foot to 125-foot poles are designed to come above ground right through the heart of the city, and then exit in some capacity, that's A, B, or D, directly through our historic neighborhood. So we are asking you to deny the sell-up, to require TEP to honestly collaborate with neighborhoods, to look for other more suitable locations, and to assume the cost of undergrounding lines should this location remain. As previously mentioned, lines are currently designed to run through numerous residential areas and historic neighborhoods. And I listed other conditions in a letter dated to the zoning examiner on 4/29/21. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your participation, Ms. Nichols. The next person is, and I'm going to mispronounce it, I'm sure, it's Ms. Nadelhofer. Is it Mile? Male?
You did very well. It's Miley Nadelhofer, and I live at 1527 East Leicester Street. I live next door to Jean Calhoun, who spoke just before Colleen. I've lived in Jefferson Park for 25 years. I work at the University of Arizona. I walk to work every day down Vine to my job at the business college, and so I usually walk home for lunch. So I walk past this location a minimum of 4 times a day, 5 days a week. So this area is obviously really important to me. I enjoy living in Jefferson Park. The beauty of our neighborhood and quality of life here is very important. I spend a lot of time outside. I've been here for the construction of the parking garage, the ring road, and the new hospital. I ask that you please deny this sell up. I feel that the safety issues with using particular the sulfur hexachloride gas have not been addressed. It was mentioned that a lot of studies have been shown to us saying that it's safe for use in residential areas. That is not what I have seen. I saw 2 links to 2 studies, one of which was broken. I haven't seen a list of refereed studies that where somebody has discussed the quality of those studies that were specific to dense residential areas near safety issues like hospitals and high commuting traffic. So I think that was hyperbole in that presentation. So I don't feel that the safety issues have been addressed concerning the gas at the station. And so I would like to reiterate what Colleen said. I live within 150 feet of the proposed site. I have safety concerns about it for my personal safety, for the hospital. And Vine is a heavily used artery for people on foot and on bicycles commuting to the hospital, to the Bio 5 campus and the main campus. So it's an important street to all of us who live here and work at these major employment centers. Okay, and I agree with Jean. What she said is that this is a much larger substation than what is already there. And it is an industrial use, and it doesn't belong in this location. And I feel endangered by it, and it's very worrisome to me. And then decoupling the siting of the lines from the siting of the substation is disingenuous, because if the substation doesn't get built here, we aren't going to be putting 75-foot poles through these different routes through established historic residential neighborhoods. And if those 75-foot poles go up, I'm not only going to feel in danger from the substation when I'm at home and walking to work, it is going to devalue my property and really damage my quality of life, because this is a beautiful place to live, and I love my neighborhood, and I love walking to work. And the potential noise, the potential danger, and it just, I find it entirely unacceptable, the situation. And we were not consulted about other sites, and I do not believe there are not other appropriate sites for this industrial use. We can do a much better job with the location of this substation and with the siting of these poles. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. The next person is Rosemary Balza.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Please start with your name and address.
Yes, I am Rosemary Bolza. The last name is spelled B as in Bravo, O-L, Z as in Zebra, A. I live at 1432 East Leicester Street. And again, just a half a block from where the substation will start. I have concerns about loss of shade, water runoff, noise, and airflow. So I also walk by this either along Ring Road or down Vine almost daily. And the present use of it is actually very pleasant. There are mature shade trees. And I have not really seen, I envisioned that this would be one massive building. So I have not seen the schematics that have been sent out did not give me a real idea of what this would be like. So I may be I don't know, maybe you can keep the trees. I don't know with the impervious surface what the plan is. You know, are you going to take out all the asphalt? Will there be basins to collect the water? It just seems like this is going to make that area much hotter in the summer. And that's really a survival issue at this point in Tucson in the summer. So I hope that this would improve the water flow, but I don't understand just how that will happen. The noise, I'm not sure about because it's hard to tell with such a bigger facility. Will there be humming and electrical noise or not? But the airflow is something that hasn't really been brought up. But I often say that I live in Banner Canyon because every time there's a new building put up, it really changes the way the air flows. And if you have this fence that won't allow any air to go through it, it's going to change whether there's a breeze or not. So I feel that this will really impact the survivability in the future if this is built. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolza. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, Ms. Sylvan, did you want to make any concluding remarks?
Yeah, I'd just like to address a couple of things, and then Mr. Urino, if there was something else that you heard and would like me to address, let me know. I did want to provide some additional answer to your question on the safety, and wondering if somebody can mute.
Would everyone who's not speaking please mute their device?
Thanks.
Mr. Rodriguez, please mute your device. Thank you.
Still getting. Okay. Sorry about that. It's hard to talk when you hear your own voice in your head echoing. A quick clarification on the safety question that you asked about the wall being on the external. There are additional safety regulations related to the clearance between the walls and the equipment on the inside of the site. And so providing the landscaping on the Vine side and the setback over there has created a situation where we need it to be on the external of the property, north and south, for all the reasons we discussed, plus that spacing, as well as over on the east side of the property. So I apologize, I wasn't as clear on that safety question that you asked earlier.
So just make sure I understand. So the equipment within the wall needs the additional space that would otherwise be required setback.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes, the wall, there's required space between the equipment and the wall, so it needs to be on the property line, particularly over on that side. A couple of things on the selection of this site that was asked at the neighborhood meeting, and in our application, pages 3 through 5, We list all of the criteria and all of the other sites that were reviewed and the selection criteria and the reason this site was chosen. I do want to point out that substations are generally located in residential areas in order to provide the service to existing residences. So part of the reason our Unified Development Code permits these through this process is to deal with those externalities, but acknowledge that that is where substations need to be. I do want to highlight again that the SF6 gas is what's used for utilities in these urban type settings, and there is one existing south of the project, the U of A substation. We did agree, and we will continue to be committed to doing noise studies. Our experience is that any noise emitted from these substations is lower than the ambient noise in the areas. And we've already talked to the neighbor across the street and others and committed we will be within the city's noise ordinance and will conduct those studies as needed, as well as the EMF studies. So there was a lot of stuff brought up, and the lighting is going to be low. This is an unmanned substation. It will be security lighting only at the levels needed for that. We will be in compliance with the outdoor lighting code. So we expect the lighting to at least match what's there now. It may be less. I'm going to stop there and see if there was something that came up that you want me to address that I didn't think of.
Just one last question from me. I saw somewhere a reference to a preference within one of the plans to undergrounding utilities. Is that applicable here?
Not to a distribution system. That has been discussed relative to the line siting and relative to those power lines, which is outside of the substation. But substations themselves are not underground.
Understood. All right, I have no more questions. I want to thank you, and I am closing the public hearing on case SE 2016. Thank everyone. Thank you for participating. I'm going to now call our next case, which is case C92103 Casas del Cerrito, Portia Avenue. Mr. Beal, would you like to present the case?
Yes. This is a request by Ken Cost of TK Development LLC on behalf of the property owner, Tucson Unified School District Number 1, to rezone approximately 9.65 acres from SR to R1 zoning for the development of a residential subdivision on a vacant parcel located between Portia Avenue and Bonanza Avenue, approximately a half mile south of Gulf Links Road and a quarter mile east of Harrison Road. The preliminary development plan, PDP, proposes a subdivision of 49 single-family homes at a density of approximately 5.1 units per acre and providing 0.3 acres of functional open space using the requirements of the flexible lot development option FLD Alternative A. The project will be limited to single-story homes with a maximum height of 19 feet, and that has been made as a condition in the preliminary conditions. The proposed development is consistent with and supported by the policy direction provided in Plan Tucson and the South Pantano Area Plan. No plan amendment is required. Subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions, approval of the requested R1 zoning is appropriate. As of today's date, there have been a total of 3 approvals and 14 protests. There have been 4 protests, outside the 150 feet and 5 within 150 feet. So there's a protest by total lots is 11.6%, and a total by percentage by area is 4%. There have been unsigned letters and emails received by PDSD are represented in the total approval and protest counts. 5 emails of protests were submitted to PDSD. And that's our report.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to be heard?
Yes, sir. This is Paul Oland. If I may share my screen and present some slides.
Yeah, please go right ahead and start with your address and just spell your last name for the record, please, Mr. Oland.
Thank you. Okay. Paul Oland, O-L-A-N-D, 7090 North Oracle Road, number 178-193-85704. Can you see my screen here with the site plan on it?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So I'll just run through. I have about a half a dozen slides here that I'll get through. I wanted to start out with the concept here. This is an infill site. As you know, it's surrounded by streets and alleys. It doesn't actually have any shared property lines with other property owners, but it is surrounded by public rights of way on 4 sides. It's an old stockpile. We've been determined, and I believe Mr. Beal agrees, that this was a stockpile that dates back to when the surrounding neighborhoods were built. So there is a bit of a hill on this site, and it is the result of homes around it being lower. So that's why there's a difference in terrain here on this site. Existing lot sizes, minimum sizes in the surrounding neighborhoods are 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. And we are within, as Mr. Beal mentioned, the South Pantano area plan, which calls for suburban density of up to 6 homes an acre within existing neighborhoods, and more when you're along a collector such as Bonanza. It also calls for walls and landscaping with vegetation to soften the transition between existing and new development. We have existing will serve letters from all utilities. They're ready to serve this project. In this part of town, home builders have expressed interest in lot sizes, typically 40 to 45 feet wide, which translates using standard depths to lot sizes of about 4,800 to 5,400 square feet. So when we were designing this site, we went with the upper end of that range. That is what home builders would like to be building in this part of town. And that's where we came to the lot size that we're proposing. We are proposing also landscape buffer yards per that area plan, South Pantano plan guidelines there. And we have a rec area proposed as well in the northwest corner. It will serve double duty to control some of the drainage coming off site, so we'll have no downstream impacts either. So after our neighborhood meeting, we heard concern about lot sizes, and we heard concern about the height of the site, and we heard concern about 2-story buildings. At the time, we had proposed a mix of single and 2-story homes. After that meeting, we decided to go ahead and limit the entire project to single story. The surrounding neighborhoods are all single story, and so we felt that was the most appropriate path forward. I'll get into some of the other issues on some other slides, but the prices are expected to start in the high 200,000s, which is above average for the area. So in terms of our grading and perimeter buffer yards, the existing terrain, as I mentioned, a stockpile, rises up to about 13 feet over nearby ground. And that's at most. It's not that high in all areas, but at the highest spot, it's about 13 feet higher than surrounding areas. Our grading proposal will cut that down to no more than about 8.5 feet on the north side and 5.5 feet on the south side. So along the north and south edges, you can see in this, there's a picture here. This is looking along one of the alleyways here. I believe this is the southeast corner of the site. And you can see how the grade raises up there once the north of the alley there. The cross section here, the illustrative graphic shows how the existing homes and proposed homes in the alley and the landscaped area will be arranged. So along the north and south edges, we've got these 16-foot alleyways. Of course, the rights of way on Bonanza and Portia are wider, but on the alleys, it's a 16-foot public right of way, and those will remain. I had somebody ask about whether or not those alleys were going to be going away in support of sort of a regional push towards having dumpsters out in the front yards. And I responded that we've heard nothing of the sort from the city on this project, and we're certainly not proposing to get rid of them either. So we'll have those 16-foot alleyways. And then on site, we'll have a 15 to 20-foot landscape buffer yard, which will take up the slope, which we'll be cutting down again, plus a 20-foot rear yard. So what that means is that from the existing property lines, not from the existing homes, but the existing property lines, they'll be over 50 feet from there to the new homes. And when you take into consideration the existing backyards, north and south, they're on average a little bit wide, a little bit deeper on the north side. So on average, with the backyards, the distance from new homes to existing homes will typically be over 80 feet on the north side and over 70 feet on the south. Additionally, you can see on here, rear yards will have 6-foot block walls that will provide visual screening in addition to the landscaping that'll be installed on the slope. And the buffer yards will be landscaped and maintained by the HOA. The walls will be decorative. There's a condition of approval and city guideline that they need to be have different aesthetic treatments, and also that any graffiti needs to be removed promptly. So the HOA will be taking care of that stuff as well. Some other examples of infill approvals. Park Modern here on the left here is, I know there were some in the staff report, but I'll bring these up as well. These are 1,600 square foot lots amongst much larger neighboring lots. On the right here is Elementary Place, which was actually another school site. That one did have a school on it, but it had, they closed it. So that one's got 5,000 square foot lots, and among lots around it that have a minimum lot size of about 10,500. So they're half the size. What we're proposing, the difference isn't nearly that great. We're proposing a 5,400 square foot minimum lot size. And again, the surrounding lots are typically 7,000 or 8,000 square foot minimum. So when the surrounding lots were built, the lot sizes were typical then. It was a wider, more ranch style architecture. That's no longer typical or economically viable. And I'll get into that here in a minute. I mentioned really quickly the traffic. 36 a.m. rush hour trips will be generated and 49 p.m. rush hour trips. That's per the traffic analysis by our traffic engineer. So low impact on neighboring streets, and there's plenty of capacity on Bonanza and Portia to take care of those numbers. So I wanted to dive into the economics a little bit. I don't usually get into this detail, but I think it's important here to explain why we've given on the single story. We'd love to do 2-story, but I agree it's not appropriate here. But why we really don't have much flexibility to reduce the lot count here. So just assuming that this is approved with 49 single-story homes, and again, that second story would provide some additional value that could be used to offset or mitigate some things. But 49 single-story homes, the cost to construct each lot right now is about $45,000. And that's of course going up as construction costs continue to rise. Cost to construct homes, these homes about $130,000, and again that's going up very quickly. Cost of permit and impact fees per home is about $17,000. I think it's $17,400. So the total cost per home is well north of $200,000, plus the cost of the land, plus all the builder's operational costs. So when you compare some of the comps in the area, in the last 12 months, nearby homes sold for an average in the high 220s. I think it was 228. And in the last 6 months, of course, everything is trending up, but in the last 6 months, the average was in the mid 240s. So even so, when you take the cost of construction of the site, acquisition and construction of over 200, and you compare that to surrounding home values, there's just not a lot of room there, which is why we're still proposing the 49 homes. And so the question of grading the site down significantly, I know that was a request that was proposed during the neighborhood meeting, and I've heard it since then on a couple occasions. But the math behind that is really that to grade the site down so that it's relatively even with surrounding grades would require exporting a little under 100,000 cubic yards of dirt. And so not only is that a tremendous number of dump truck loads going down the road, but more prohibitively here, at about $15 a yard to get rid of that dirt, which is what it's costing, that translates into about $1.4 million to cut that hill down and get rid of the dirt, which with 49 lots is about 29 grand a lot. So when you take the 221 plus the land cost, plus the builder's operational costs, plus another almost $30,000 per home to cut that down, it simply doesn't pencil. And that's where we're at. And that's why we're proposing 49 lots here. Plan Tucson categorizes this, as Mr. Beal mentioned, as an existing neighborhood building block, which stresses compatible infill. The sub goal, there's a number of sub goals and policies that we conform with. There are some that are not applicable. They're applicable to sites on arterial roads and to multifamily proposals, things like that. But in terms of the goals and policies that are applicable to this project, I'll just run through a few of them here. So encouraging development of a variety of housing types. We are providing single family homes. Protecting the integrity of existing neighborhoods. There's several directives there. One of them there, so we're not converting residential uses, we're maintaining it. In terms of the overall area there, we're not injecting a land use that's not familiar to the area. This is a residential neighborhood. Promoting clustering and design flexibility, we are proposing to use the FLD option under R1. And again, we're proposing R1. R1 is what most of the land around us is zoned. So we're sticking with that as well. Another policy is to promote residential infill, as I mentioned. Vacant land here where adequate infrastructure, streets and utilities are available. I mentioned we've got utility will serve letters already, and there's ample capacity in both the utility side and the traffic side to accommodate this development. We are falling within suburban density of up to 6 homes per acre. We're at right about 5, which is compliant there with that policy. And there's also this goal of locating infill along collector streets. Well, Bonanza's a collector, and so that's what we're doing. We're compliant with that policy as well. In terms of compatibility, we are incorporating some of these elements here. We've got buffering. We've got the landscaped buffer yards that will be owned and maintained by the HOA. They'll keep those areas clean, keep the vegetation in good shape, and also, like I said, remove trash and graffiti promptly. The existing alleyway also does provide some further separation. And then defensible space issues. The existing alleys, I think that picture that I showed before, you can see it's very overgrown. Potential safety issues. So we'll be, when we develop this site, it'll be cleaning all that up, trimming back all that vegetation, or replacing some of it with healthy nursery stock or transplants from on site. Lastly, right here, there is an existing public drainage easement that runs right through the north edge of this site. You can see just to the, I'll just bump right back to here. Right here is an existing kind of community open space that also functions as a basin. There's a drop structure right here that goes through some pipes through the site and then drains through this existing drainage way. So we're of course preserving that. We're not gonna mess with that at all. And then also the last one here, encouraging proposed higher density development with transitions that are appropriate. So again, we're sticking with the R1 zone, using the FLD that's available within that R1 zone, and employing some mitigation measures here to encourage and just to encourage compatibility. So that's about it. I'd say in conclusion, this is an infill project. It has incorporated building height limitations, setbacks, landscaping, decorative wall screening to increase compatibility. It will put houses 70 to 80 feet apart from existing homes. Home values in the area, coupled with high development costs, just don't support the cost of offering larger lots here. And that's the plain and simple truth. And so this is the kind of development that is encouraged by Plan Tucson. And we're okay with all the conditions of approval in the staff report, and we're happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. I just have two questions to start. Could you go back to the preliminary development plan? So okay, would whoever has their device not muted, please mute so we don't get the feedback, and I will be calling on others to talk in just a minute. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Rowland, tell me about the basin in the northwest corner. That's drainage, obviously.
Sure. So it'll do double duty, as I mentioned. Right now, the drainage that comes off the site, it's a hill. So there's not really any drainage coming onto the site. It's all drainage leaving the site. So it's a pretty atypical situation. But what we'll be doing is obviously collecting and controlling all the drainage that does come off, routing it so that it's coming off in the same way that it's coming off now and not impacting downstream properties. The basin here will be the main collection point. Again, it'll be landscaped. We're envisioning a ramada, some benches, maybe a play structure, something like that. We're looking at that, talking to the builders about that. But it will be designed in such a way, obviously, that when there is a major storm event, it would collect the water there, get rid of the water according to the city's drainage code, and then it could go back to being used as a rec area. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it did and I appreciate it. So you need that as a hydrology feature no matter what, right?
Yeah, our drainage engineer has told us that we need about 1/3 of an acre here to accommodate the drainage needs. I mean, obviously by adding homes and driveways and the street will be increasing the amount of impervious, so we need to capture that additional runoff. Understood.
And I've been out to the property, so the elevation is really striking. If you drive by the property, the elevation difference between the property and the adjoining neighborhoods is quite striking. So just looking at, I think it was in your site analysis, looks like the difference between the adjoining neighborhood to the north and south and the subject property is between 7 and 12 feet different in elevation, higher in elevation on the subject property. So I'm just curious how you get it down to by leveling out. How do you get it down to 5 feet?
Well,
5 feet difference between the elevation of the subject property and the neighbors. I mean,
sure.
Have you run those numbers exactly, or is that just a rough estimate?
No, sir. Our civil engineer has a grading plan that he's put together in CAD, and he's run the model, and that's what he's determined is that if we basically cut off the highest parts, redistribute the dirt into some of the lower and medium areas, then we can get it down, like I mentioned, to no more than 8.5 feet on the north side and 5.5 feet on the south side.
Okay. He knows better than I do on that, for sure.
Me
Okay,
too.
well, thank you. So we did have one request by email. So I'm going to call first on Zacharias Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, are you present?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So please start with your name and address, and then please go right ahead after that.
Zacharias Rodriguez, 9732 East Watson. Now, my property faces north of the subject proposal, so I'm directly affected by the height and of the new proposed, homes. So our concern is that we're going to be looking at a 12-foot, if not bigger, brick wall, and the vegetation that they're going to put in there will take, some time to mature, I would imagine. So, for, our peace and quiet enjoyment is just going to be really, interrupted by, what we have to look at through our backyard and directly through our views. And another thing concerns us is if this does happen, there's going to be construction. And like I said, I'm like 10 to 16 feet where the construction is going to happen. So, for months, to maybe even years, we're not going to be able to enjoy our property. And then when is completed, we're going to have residents that are going to look right upon our property that we have, and we have big open windows, so our privacy seems that it's going to be compromised, regardless of what they do with this particular property. And another thing concerning us is that we feel like I've been misinformed. I didn't get any information. There's a couple of things that I never got that I got from my neighbor yesterday. One was the paper that had the city of Tucson public hearing notice, and there were some particular things on there, like emailing you to request to speak. And I did that like 8 minutes before 5 o'clock. And on that particular paper, there's some, it says May 6th, which, today's the 6th and today's Thursday. So there's some inaccuracies there, which concerns us. So some of the other residents that are nearby boundaries, might not be able to speak or be part of this meeting. So that concerns us as well. A couple other things is that, the houses that they're proposing, they're not even going to confide in the same particular homes. Now I know they're going to be smaller, but how is that going to help the appraisal of the existing homes? I don't think, there's not like homes. They're going to be totally, too different. Our homes were built, 30 years ago versus these homes that are built, in today's. So that concerns me big time as well. Let me see. Again, the view is going to be obstructed from us, from the height of these homes are going to be. The noise ordinance, which, concerns us. And I think that's all I have to say at this time. Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I see that Anthony has his hand up. Anthony, would you start by giving us your full name and address, and then please proceed from there?
Hi, so my name is Anthony Henke, Henke, last name. And we live here at 9772 East Watson Drive.
Okay, so go right ahead.
And we wanted to bring up yet again the elevation concern, because here, well, at least in my backyard and the adjoining backyard next to us, we appear to have nearly one of the highest areas of the dirt hill in our backyard, and we're concerned on how you are going to move this dirt and what basically how level these houses are going to be. These houses are going to be A-frame style houses, I believe. So they're going to be awful. They're going to be really, really tall, and then they're going to be on top of a hill as well. I mean, from my backyard, it's about actually a 15-foot hill from the alley ground level up. So we're concerned that the houses are going to be very, very tall and block our view and take from our privacy. I mean, our wall isn't very tall, and we have a pool that we like to enjoy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Henke. The next person I'd like to hear from is Dave A. Mr. Dave, would you start with your full name and address and go from there?
Good evening. My name is David Antrobus, spelled Antrobus. I live at 3201 South Portia Avenue, right there on the southwest corner of the proposed lot. Along with my neighbors there along Watson, we kind of have similar concerns. For one, since I'm the first home on the southwest corner, I have big time concerns with the increased traffic coming out of the main entrance. It looks like on Portia, the elevation, the difference in grading. Once these homes go in, if they go in, there goes the privacy. We have virtually no more privacy in our backyard. And what about the drainage? I see the drainage looks like the drainage that Mr. Olin addressed is on the north portion of the proposed subdivision. And I wonder, is there going to be sufficient drainage for us on the southwest corner? I'm also concerned there didn't seem to be a lot of time for from the time I received the notice, the approval protest form, there wasn't sufficient time to really put together address my concerns and get it back to the city. And should have been, I think there should have been more time for us to reply. And that's mainly my concerns, is the privacy issues and the drainage and so on and so forth.
Okay.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much. Mark Brazil.
Yes, I'm Mark Brazil, Brazil. I live on Watson at 9871. It's the house across the street from the lone house at the corner, the northeast corner of the lot there, off Watson. And I have several concerns. First of all, Mr. Olin talked about the traffic. Yet in his report, in his proposal, he's showing that the average daily in and out traffic rate is going to increase by 50%. So that's going to put a strain on Portia, especially because it's not a feeder road. People who are leaving from that subdivision and going down to Harrison are going to, Harrison is got a big problem right now because there's a lot of traffic on it, and there really should be a light at Stella and Harrison, which has, as far as I've been able to see, isn't in any kind of public works for the RTA or anything else, Regional Transportation Authority. The other thing is, I was reading through the Fish and Wildlife thing that he had to that he filled out, and it said that he needed to contact Fish and Wildlife, and I was wondering if he had done that yet to find out what species he needed to be concerned about. Also, I'm wondering when and if the construction will start, if the proposal goes through and gets and everything.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Brazil?
No, I would kind of like to get some answers to those couple of questions.
You bet. And the way this works is I'll hear from everyone, and then Mr. Oland will have a chance to respond to your questions. All right?
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Michael and Roberta Oliver.
This is Roberta. I'll speak first and then my husband will speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just need your name.
We
and
are
address.
opposed to this.
I need your name and address.
Roberta.
Yeah.
Roberta Oliver,
Yes.
Oliver. We live at 9832 East Watson Drive.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We're concerned that the developer, he has changed the plan from 2 stories to single stories, but those homes will still be situated on a higher grade than the existing homes. That's going to basically create a privacy issue for the existing residences and aesthetics. This was a major concern that was voiced at the community meeting in December, and it appears to me that Mr. Olin has only addressed one issue from that meeting, and that was the single story issue. The proposed number of homes on the property, 49, that's double the density of the existing area. Watson Drive right now, between Portia and Bonanza, there's only 27 houses. 49 is going to double it. The property size is also extremely small. A point of comparison, Casa del Cerritos, 45 by 120 or 5,400 square feet. The standard lot size for the modular homes at Harrison Hills is 58 by 100 or 5,800 square feet. So he's actually proposing home lots that are smaller than what a mobile home park lot is. The only difference between those is that these houses won't be able to be moved. We're also concerned about the negative impact of the wildlife in that area. We have a herd of over 20 javelina that live on that property. There's bobcats, great horned owls, quail, doves, rabbits, coyotes, desert tortoise. I mean, you're talking about a destruction of wildlife habitat, critical wildlife habitat in the urban area. There's also the impact on the infrastructure of the neighborhood. 49 homes, with most of those having probably 2 cars, would mean an additional 100 cars to the roads. There's already problems during commute time with people trying to make left-hand turns onto Harrison, and this is not going to be good. We also have some major concerns with the lack of interaction and communication with this developer, and as well as with Mr. Koss, which I understand he tried to have a meeting. He had a meeting back in November of 2019, was soundly told, we don't want this, and now he's coming back around using Mr. Olin as his front person. That just really feels not right. Rather than trying to work with the neighborhood, we feel that Mr. Olin is trying to slip things through without anyone noticing. All written communication from Mr. Olin has come in a plain envelope with only an address sticker on it. A lot of people have misinterpreted this as junk mail and not responded. At the community meeting back in December, Mr. Olin said that he would continue to let us know what the different steps would be taken. We heard absolutely nothing from Mr. Olin until after the signs went up announcing this meeting. And note that the meeting on that sign was last Thursday initially. And it wasn't until after we had spoken with Mr. Beal that that sign was changed. We've had neighbors that have observed workers up on the property doing surveys. None of those surveys, none of this was communicated with the neighborhood. He has just basically cut us out, and I feel like trying to slip things in. Let's see. So, with the sign, the posting of the meeting, I just wonder how many people went in on that meeting last Thursday. The signs were posted in places where most people probably didn't notice them. One of them happens to be right next to our house. But people coming out of Falcon Point, which this is going to impact, they would never see the sign because it's posted way down on the corner of the lot. People who are on Winona or Serena Circle would never have seen the sign because it's posted way over on the southwest corner of the lot. So, it's like you're doing the letter of the law, but not really wanting people to know because you really want to slip this through without anybody knowing. And this will impact the property values of this area. We already know of one person whose house has been on the market since before the December meeting, but because of the possibility of the rezoning and construction, they've lost several people that have been interested in buying their house. They find out, they're going to rezone. We don't want to be there. We don't want to have construction going on next to our home. So the idea that Mr. Olin expressed to us at the beginning of the meeting in December that, this is going to raise your property values, that's BS. People are, it's basically having a really negative effect on things. So I'm going to let my husband speak.
Okay. Mr. Oliver?
Naturally, I echo my wife's sentiments. What my concern is, one, you've seen the design that Mr. Olin has placed out there and the density of the houses. 49 houses in the same area that basically encompasses the north and south sides of Watson Drive. That is double the density. It may fall within an R2 plan. Fine, that's what it may fall in. But let's be personal about this. Would you want this in your backyard? 49 houses in the footprint of 27 houses. It does not fit the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The style does not fit the existing architecture. These houses are going to be anywhere from 5.5 to 7.5 feet above the alleyway behind of those folks that are south of the lot and on the north of the lot. That's like standing in your backyard, and the lot level of the new home is going to be equivalent to a full-grown adult male or female. I fail to see those stakes. It's going to be this eyesore of a cracker box development in the middle of an existing neighborhood. Aesthetically, it's appalling. I can't even believe the city to even consider this. Why? It'd just be this monstrosity of an eyesore. And again, the habitat issue, there's a lot of wildlife up there. That is critical habitat. There's wildlife that migrate from the Botano Wash up the Wash at Stella, up behind Falcon Point, and going off across other side of Houghton. Where are they supposed to go? I mean, there's javelina, there's owls, there's quail, there's doves, there's rabbits, there's coyotes, there's bobcats. It's like, too bad, they're gone. They'll find another place to live. No, they won't. They're going to be run out, and they're basically going to be eradicated because it's not convenient. And as Roberta said, all the information that has come from Mr. Oland has been, pardon my French, kind of underhanded. I walked the neighborhood in December prior to the first community meeting. I'd say probably 75% of the people I spoke to, one-on-one, said, oh, we got a letter? Oh, that's right, I threw it away. I thought it was junk mail. What are they trying to hide when they won't show a return address on the envelope and who it is from? What is there to hide? Why the secrecy? And with the property posted for the zoning meeting, 3 signs are posted. One behind the house at the northeast corner of the lot, right behind his fence. You don't see the sign until you've come up on Watson Drive. The second sign was outside our house on the alley that comes across, angles across into Watson Drive. That sign is, the face of the sign is parallel to Watson Drive. If you're driving, you're not going to see that sign unless you happen to glance over to the right or the left and see it. And the third sign was on the southwest corner of the proposed development lot. And for those individuals that live on Winona Circle and Serena, what reason do they have to drive down Portia? None. So that group, half the people affected by that would have no the slightest idea of knowing there was a zoning meeting coming up. Just kept in the dark. Did they receive a letter? Hey, this is zoning meetings coming up. We don't have to post the sign next to your house where you can see it. Or maybe perhaps post it at the corner, at the intersection of Stella and Portia. That'd have been a perfect place for it. That would have given advice to the neighborhood. This is coming up, but why? What is there to hide? We've been in that house for 28 years. It's a wonderful neighborhood. This development is going to destroy the aesthetics. It's going to be an eyesore. And at the first meeting, I'm not sure if Mr. Olin has told you, there was no one, absolutely no one in that first meeting that supported this development. And opposition came from the Falcon Point Homeowners Association. The president said he adamantly opposes the development. And another person was the South Harrison Neighborhood Association, who said, we oppose this. There has been no support of this whatsoever from the surrounding neighborhood. Absolutely none. And I challenge the commission, the zoning commission, go out and talk to everybody that surrounds that lot. Ask them, do you support this? You get a one-syllable, one-word answer. No. The fact that he has to move umpteen thousand yards of dirt. Dirt is a huge construction commodity. If he's going to tell you that we need to pay to move this dirt. No, he's going to sell that dirt. So that is not going to be a liability. Chances are that's going to be an asset. We personally have friends that live on the northwest corner of Winona Circle. Their house got to signing for sale. The buyers got wind of the construction. They backed out on it. So how does that affect everybody else in the neighborhood who is planning on selling their home, either retirement or move to take care of parents or what have you, and they can't sell their home at fair market value for that neighborhood? Are we going to be compensated that loss in value? What's in it for anybody that lives there? Yeah, Mr. Orland, he's going to make a profit on this, but what's the impact on all of us, on our lives, on our neighborhood, the value of our home, the flexibility to move where we want to move to, either by choice or because we have to? There's no benefit to this development to anybody in the immediately surrounding neighborhood. Absolutely none. And again, everybody is opposed to it. So I'm going to rest my case.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Smith, J.D. Smith.
Yes, hi, this is Julie Beckler. JD Smith is my partner, and he is here with me, and we live at 3140 South Portia Avenue. So we are the home directly in front of the entrance when you come off of Portia. So we're very concerned about this neighborhood, you know, for various reasons that everyone's mentioned, but, you know, one being the traffic. Portia cannot take the amount of traffic that's going to come from that neighborhood. Along with that, it's going to put headlights straight into our kitchen and dining room, you know, every night when there are people coming in and out of the neighborhood continuously, which is, you know, going to reduce our quality of life in living here and the reasons that we moved here. We're also going to have to deal with construction for however long this project is going to take. And I know he talked about the drainage on the opposite portion, but that doesn't, you know, have anything to do with the drainage that's going to come straight into our yard and straight into our home from this, you know, development being built as well. So we have privacy issues, you know, related to just the amount of people that are going to be directly across the street from us. And then, you know, the environmental impact that it's going to have, and also, you know, just our quality of life when living here. When we moved here, this was not, you know, we did not want to live at the entrance to a neighborhood. That was not our goal when we moved into this home. So my partner, JD Smith, is going to talk now.
Okay, please go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Hello, good evening. One of our biggest concerns is I would like to know if and when the environmental impact studies have been done for the property. Well, repairing studies have been done. I think if most of you will know that Tucson School District used this property as a research area where they brought students out to learn about the desert. There's turtles, there's coyotes, there's quail, there's all sorts of animals that live on this property. This is going to be an atrocity to allow this subdivision to go forward. The numbers don't make sense. He told you the numbers don't make sense. They're going to move the dirt. There'll be 18-foot tall walls around this property. Who wants to live beside a fort? I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next person would be Frank, last initial P. Mr. Frank, would you go ahead?
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Frank Pardak. It's P as in Paul, Y-R, D as in Delta, E as in Echo, C as in Charlie, K as in Kilo. I'm at 9440 East 39th Street. And I have a few points to make. I'm also the secretary for the South Harrison Neighborhood Association. As previously described, the community input is very much opposed to this project. And the people I spoke with would prefer to see a city park instead. Would offer more opportunity and better environment for life, quality of life. Now, the traffic concerns, I would have a much different opinion for the streets Bonanza and Stella, because currently I get a lot of complaints that people are using those streets as a 2-lane road when they're actually a single lane. The speeding. We were able to have Tucson Police Department a little over a year ago put visibility over there for about a month. It improved things. There were several arrests, but they can't stay there. So now that they've left, the motorists have reverted back to past practice. Area is also a bypass for getting from Harrison Road to Seacrest Middle School, so you can avoid the intersection at Golf Links at Harrison. As far on Harrison Road itself, which is a little further west, is a very busy 2-lane road. There are no planned improvements. I've pushed for RTA improvements with the Ward 4 office, but the reality is that the funding is competing with newer housing developments, and we're not going to get there. We can improve the look at a 2-lane road, but we're not going to get any more efficient flow of traffic. And I agree that a light or a stop sign will help, and that's a side project. The Harrison Road is already an alternative for people that want to get past the Seacrest School Zone on Houghton. And with the RTA project over there from 22nd to Irvington starting in a couple of years, it's only going to increase the amount of traffic on Harrison. There's not much other place to run a detour. I was concerned about the approval and protest forms that I didn't receive, but I'm not nearer to this project. And I'm also concerned about the feedback and the amount of time residents have to respond. Other than that, I appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate your participation, Mr. Perdak. The next person is Lisa Pose or Pose.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Can you? Oh, hi. Yes, I'm Lisa Poss. P is in Papa, O is in Oscar, S is in Sierra. So there's not much that I can add. I don't know. I just retired from the military. I've been living in this community for 20 years. I'm sorry, my address is 9812 East Watson Drive. And a lot of our views are very emotionally charged. We picked this place because of how it looked aesthetically to us when we moved into the neighborhood. And there's no ignorance in knowing that there's 10 undeveloped acres out there that someday couldn't turn into something else. I mean, it could have turned into anything, but, and I understand that money drives this whole concept of bringing people in, building homes. That's what we do. I suppose if I was a home developer, I'd be looking for something such as this to invest my money in. But when you have raised your children, this is emotional for me. When you've raised your children and you've walked back there with them and your dogs and you've seen the animals. I have one of the biggest berms back here. I'm on the northern side. I'm going to be most affected by this whole leveling or how much they're going to level. And I sit out there every morning as the sun rises and I look out and I see these beautiful trees and javelina and our children and the peace and the quiet. And I know that eventually that's going to be developed into something else. And I know that it's not cost effective for these developers to come in and put in homes that are just like ours. I mean, that stretch of property in which they want to develop would be, as people mentioned, I think it was somewhere around 27 or 28 homes versus 49. Our streets are in disrepair. In the last 20 years, I've seen people drive down Watson at 50 miles an hour. And I don't know if it has to do with a thoroughfare going to a different neighborhood, and things have mellowed and quieted. And I'm concerned about traffic. The roads are in disrepair. I don't know if this is like a military interview that I have to list each and everything that other people have mentioned, because it's a check mark that I am a person who's opposed to this. I don't know if I have to talk about, you know, the type of aesthetics of the building being different and being opposed to this new rezoning, and how is this going to affect the character of my home and my property taxes. Um, it's all of that. I'm concerned about safety for like if I can't control this and it happens, what I would want to see is speed bumps put in my neighborhood. I would want to see the roads repaired. And I know that that is not part of a building plan that has to do with building this, but all of those things are a factor. But and another thing is I am recently doing some remodeling to my home. Am I going to be able to get my vehicle out into the alley? As of right now, I have a turning radius that I can get out there. Is that going to be a problem when they put in this, you know, I have a toy hauler. Am I going to be able to pull it out through the trailer? Am I going to have to back it out through the front yard? I mean, it's how much of all of this is going to disrupt my life. And I understand there's change. I understand these things have to happen. It's just if this isn't cost effective, then why are you not looking for this development to go elsewhere and put in something like, you know, can all of us in this community get together and put in a park? Can we somehow have a developer that would be interested in putting in homes that are smaller than this? I mean, this is going to be my forever home, and you are going to change the aesthetics of that. And I'm very emotionally charged about this. I'm very upset. I'm sorry. So I really don't have anything else to add, but it is personal. This is very personal to me. So I'm sorry.
No apology needed. Thank you very much for participating, Ms. Pose. It's important to participate in the process. The next person is Andy. Is Andy present?
Yes.
Please go ahead with
I'm
full name
my
and
name is
address. And
Andy.
go right ahead.
Yeah. Andy Partney, Partney. I live at 10,001 Falcon Point. I'm also the president of the association, been the president for almost 14 years. As we talked with Mr. Olin back in December, the traffic is not acceptable. The amount of traffic that's going to be entered into the system, the roads are not going to accommodate it. The roads are already in disarray. Now Mr. Olin has said, you know, that the houses that are already there on the north end of the zoning that they're wanting to do, the houses are 19 feet plus 8.5 feet. So you're going to have 27-foot higher house than the houses that are on the north side of the property. And then on the south side, you're going to have houses that are 24 feet higher to the top of their roof. So all the adjoining houses on the north side and the south side, they're basically going to be looking at a wall, either a block wall or a house. They're not going to have any kind of view. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter, and we go down there all the time. There's all kinds of wildlife there. He hasn't done a study like he should have. Our entire subdivision, I've had one homeowner come to me with a letter. I received no letters. I've asked for letters. I gave my information at the last meeting. No other homeowner has been given any kind of notice as to what's going on. The signs that were over there that they had put up had the wrong dates for the meeting. Luckily, I was in touch with, I think it was Zachariah. That's one of the homeowners that's over there in order to be at the meeting tonight. There's been no communication like there should be. I just think that this has been something that they're trying to push through secretively. The other major concern that I had that Mr. Olin said a while ago is the drainage. his 3/10 of an acre down there for drainage. There's already issues with drainage with the property already. I mean, if you go walk around on Porsche over there, there's already dirt that's running off, you know, if you get a major storm or something coming in. And he indicated that he wasn't going to tie into the original drainage that comes out of Falcon Point. How's he going to accomplish that with that area? Because there's a lot of water. We actually have water that comes all the way from Houghton. Austin Point comes through into their playground area, and then it comes out onto Watson in our subdivision, and Watson basically becomes a river, and then it all goes down into that retention basin, and sometimes it ends up out in the road. So that's definitely a concern. Like I said, the traffic is the biggest thing. There's nothing slated for Harrison to be widened. They're not going to put up any lights anytime soon over there. Porsche already is crippled with the traffic that they have there now to accommodate the new traffic, not to mention the traffic that's going to be coming out on Bonanza as well. And like some of the other homeowners have been saying, you know, Bonanza is like a double wide road almost, even though it's not. It's a separate 2-lane road, but people think that they can go both ways on each lane, and that's not how it's supposed to be. And in order to get to the Seacrest School as well, some people are going through, and we're just the streets are not going to accommodate the traffic. But the communication is just not happening like it should be. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Pardney. Laura Campbell. Ms. Campbell, did you want to be heard? Ms. Campbell? Okay, we'll pass over Ms. Campbell for a minute. Jesse, did you want to be heard?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can, and just start with your name and address.
Sure. My name is Jesse Hill. I reside at 3241 South Porsche Avenue. First, I want to say thank you for allowing us to have this meeting to discuss this zoning change. A lot of the neighbors have already expressed a lot of my primary concerns. My number one issue is in regards to traffic. I mean, Mr. Olin had said that his civil engineer had taken a look at the traffic and they're expecting about 49 additional vehicles. But, I don't think that there's been any kind of real comprehensive study on that traffic, especially on Porsche Avenue, where, we've got a lot of people that fly through there, to kind of not have to go up Harrison per se. Harrison right now, as the neighborhood association, the South Harrison Neighborhood Association secretary had already stated, that it's definitely an issue. And this is just going to exacerbate that issue. Second to that, in regards to the leveling of the land, I don't understand if he's making if Mr. Olin's making comments about how it's not economically viable to do it, then why are we pursuing it then? If you're not going to be able to equally level the land out, right, and make it more comparable to the surrounding neighborhood area, then maybe it's not the solution that you want, and it might not be in your interest to develop the land there. Thirdly, if some of my other neighbors have already stated that, aesthetically it's going to be different. It is. You can look at this plot that you're looking at right now. I mean, you've got, double the density than what it was originally intended for. And I understand, that progress is what progress is. However, again, if it's not economically viable to build less than 49 homes in a very small plot of land, which this is what it looks like to me, then maybe it's not the right usage of the land, you know. Additionally, on Portia, heading south down Portia, the structure of the land is such that it's angled downward, right? So I would be a little concerned about drainage coming south, down from the development. In addition to the wildlife displacement, you know, a lot of my neighbors have talked about they're essentially going to be eradicated. That's true, but they're also going to be displaced. And where are they going to go? Right, they're going to go into the existing neighborhood. So those were my primary concerns. Thank you for giving me time to speak, and I look forward to finding the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for participating. We really appreciate it. Laura Campbell. I see you unmuted your device, so would you like to go ahead? Perhaps you're having technical issues at your end. Joyce Beal?
Yes, my name is Joyce Jostin Beal, Joostenbeal. I am the Vice President of the Old Spanish Trail Neighborhood Association. Been active in this association for 20 years. We've seen a lot of rezonings. I think based on everything that I've heard from this neighborhood, and I've actually walked this neighborhood in December and spoke to the neighbors about this development, is that we just haven't had enough time to talk with the developer. We only had the one meeting in December. We thought that there would be additional meetings. I'm used to having additional meetings where we can gather the information we need regarding all of the items that they talked about so that we can at least make a more informed decision. This is the first, and I've talked to Mr. Olin a few times, but this is the first that I've heard about what these differentials are, that we have the 8.5 feet on the north and the 5.5 on the south. I really think that a continuance is in order for the neighborhood to have their concerns addressed. This site, actually, I do believe is a good infill site, but the issue is it is way too high. And I understand the economic concerns about lowering this property to the same level as the street. Let me just say that if this site was lowered to the level of the street and we lowered the density some, I don't think there would be any question that this would be an ideal site for infill, for sure. But what's going on right now is that we just don't have enough time to address the concerns that the neighbors are having. I have concerns about the way it was posted. The letters that we received, first the posting was the 29th. I actually called Mr. Beal in a frantic thinking, oh my gosh, it's the 29th. And then a neighbor told me, well, I got a letter, but that's the mayor and council that's happening on the 6th. And so, you know, you're trying to help people. That's kind of our job as association representatives, is to help these people, help neighbors so that they can have a say in these types of things. The amount of protests that you have relative to the people that we've all spoken to and the people that are here today, there was just not enough time to put it in. And even your letter dated May 6th, it says mail it in. Well, nowadays we're not mailing it in, and I was told you could send it in via email, but there's no email address on your protest letter where we're supposed to be sending this information. Once I got onto the zoning site trying to get this information to pull it off your site. If you're not a person who's suave with computers, normally we sit down with the developer or have these conversations and they're able to share this information with us. We learn about the traffic. We learn about how they're going to handle these grade differentials. This grade differential is a big problem for this site, and I don't think it's been adequately addressed. And I feel that it's important that it does get addressed before a decision is made. Mr. Olin, I've appreciated some of the conversations I've had with him. He's indicated that they might be willing to do some things like talk about making sure that we have this HOA and what this recreational basin is going to look like, and some of the concessions that he's offered, that he is willing to put some of that stuff in writing. Again, we have no time. So we are sitting here, you're being asked to make a decision when I feel that if we had a continuance, we could all come together, perhaps to a certain degree, whether we agree to differ or not. But certainly those people that are in opposition have not had the opportunity to present those letters of protest, which I believe, unfortunately, is what's going to happen at this date. I also actually took issue with the planning department. I did look at the summary recommendation and the fact that they identified the 2 school sites that had schools on them, using that as related cases for this development. First of all, those are public schools. So those neighborhoods are used to people coming and going, the bells ringing, everyone, the traffic, all of those things that occur because it's a school. This site, obviously, you know, the javelina and the squirrels don't need, you know, the traffic, don't need a good street. So I really take issue with the fact that they selected this. I think that the density is a little high, but actually I don't think it's too excessive. Like to see it more down around 4, which is what has been happening, at least happened in our neighborhood, where those densities were down around 4 instead of at 5. Let's see. Probably the biggest thing is that we've had a lack of meetings, and I think we all anticipated that Mr. Olin would have additional meetings, and I was very shocked when my neighbor showed me the sign. Oh, that's something else. So the signs go up, and so neighbors see the sign and they think, oh, well, the meeting's this day, but those signs got changed out. But once you see a sign, you're not going to go up and check the date again because they're not exactly very visible. So I just really feel like neighbors haven't had the opportunity to have their say in what's going on, which is going to very much directly affect them. So that is all I have to say, and I hope that you will take that into consideration and offer a continuance of this so that the neighbors can at least have an opportunity to talk to Mr. Olin, find out, look at some of the documentation that's available to them, which I'm sure none of them really had the chance to do so. So that would be my request. As it stands right now, based on the height of this property and the fact that even looking at his numbers, he's saying it's costing $29,000 to lower it down to grade level. Well, okay, well, what if we cut that cost? Can we lower it, you know, at least down to 2 feet instead of 5 feet above? You know, I mean, there's definitely perhaps some things that can be done, but that grade differential is a big issue with this property. So like I said, I hope you will consider continuing this hearing so that those matters can be addressed and the neighborhood association in this process can work the way it's supposed to work, where everyone becomes informed. They might not like it, but everybody becomes informed and they know and get to have a say about what's happening. And I don't feel like that has happened in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. Ms. Campbell, I'm going to make one more effort. If you're there and would like to participate, please go right ahead. Okay. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard before I ask Mr. Oland if he would like to make some additional remarks? Anybody else out there who's wanting to say something, please tell me now.
Yeah, this is Mark.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is Angel Viano. I'm at 9752 East Watson Drive. I'm calling in by phone. And I listened to my neighbors And to Ms. Beal and several of the neighbors have mentioned that the communication was poor, the dates were wrong, the letters weren't received, a host of different things. And Ms. Beal also brought up that we had anticipated at least one more meeting, not realizing that this meeting we just found out about is the end of the end. And I myself, just last night, and I do mean like 5 o'clock last night, received a copy of this Casa del Cerrito rezoning site analysis. It's 61 pages. Now, I don't know how good a reader everybody else is, but I can't wade through 61 pages with any kind of clarification. And I don't feel as though most of the neighbors with whom I spoke have not seen this rezoning site analysis. There's a lot of really important information that we should have a chance to be able to review and address. What I would like to see, I agree with the request for the continuation. I strongly urge it. I would like to see a copy of this rezoning site analysis sent to the neighborhoods who are affected and give us 30 days to review that and then have another meeting before we make the final decision on the zoning. That's my request.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the audience like to speak?
Yeah, this is Mark Brazil. I'd just like to throw something else in here.
Mr. Brazil, you spoke already. Do you have something new?
Right. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up. Depending on when this construction comes about, one of the things in his analysis in that proposal was that there were no major constructions going on within a mile of the site. However, I don't think he looked at the Regional Transportation Authority website to talks about the Houghton corridor, which was brought up by somebody earlier, the 22nd to Irvington widening and construction that's going to happen sometime around 2023 or so. If this construction doesn't start until that period of time, Bonanza and Harrison is going to become a major thoroughfare for people trying to avoid that construction on Houghton.
Okay.
The other thing too, just as a point of contention, is the letter that he sent out on the 17th.
Remember that letter we got from the neighborhood association about?
We have to speak one at a time. We have to take turns in this exercise or it doesn't work. Mr. Brazil, did you want to finish up what you were saying?
Right. The letter that he sent out, the developer sent out that was dated the 17th, had nothing in it about when the meeting was going to be. It wasn't until we got your letter from the zoning department a couple of days later that told us when the date was officially. So that's kind of a bone of contention. He's sending out a letter to say, yeah, this is going to happen, but doesn't tell anybody when it's going to happen. So anyway, that's all I got to say on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would anyone who has not spoken like to speak?
I would like to speak if I could.
Yes, go right ahead. Start with your name and address.
My name is Ray Henke, Henke. I live at 9772 East Watson Drive.
Okay, Mr. Henke, you must be related to Mr. Anthony Henke.
Yes, I am. I am his father.
Good for you. And let's go ahead and tell me what you want to tell me.
Okay, so I moved here 20 years ago, and the thing that sold me on this house was looking out in the backyard and seeing this beautiful desert wildlife that they told me was TUSD property that was never going to be anything built on it. And that's why I bought the property. Now you're talking about building some house 80 feet behind me that's 30 foot tall. I won't even get no sun to my pool anymore. I won't see nothing but a brick wall and a house behind me. I don't think my satellite dish will even get any reception at all. The neighborhood was not made for homes in that particular area right there. It was supposed to be wildlife for the TUSD. You guys didn't give us a park in this neighborhood at all. That has been the park for all the kids in the neighborhood. That's their park. They grew up there. Everybody grew up there. You can't just take this away from us. It's not right.
We signed this stuff, all these houses all together, crammed behind us, where we're going to get no privacy at all. Talking about looking at nothing but a brick wall behind my house. You know, I probably wouldn't even be able to sell my house at this point if you guys build this subdivision back there. I think you're just really ruining the neighborhood. You're screwing all the people that already live in this neighborhood. I totally just disapprove of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Henke. Would anyone else who has not spoken yet like to speak? I think the answer is no. Mr. Olin, did you want to say anything further?
Yes, sir, I would. Just a few things. I want to address a number of the things that were said here tonight. First of all, the question of sign posting dates and locations and everything. The locations, we didn't pick the locations. Those are specified by the city. The date did change. That was not something we did. It was originally scheduled for a week before. We received a request from the city. Would it be okay if we moved the date? We said, sure, no problem. The sign company had already made the signs. We got them the new sign design with the new dates on it as soon as we could. And unfortunately, by the time that happened, they had already posted the previous signs. But we got on them and they swapped those out as soon as we had that information. But again, those are at the location specified, given to us. And again, those dates are not ours. So, and when the change was made, we got that change done as quickly as we possibly could with the sign company. As far as a lack of meetings and everything in this time of strange COVID and everything, you know, we had a meeting late last year. We did hear three big issues: the building height, the grade, and the density. Traffic was also mentioned, but those three were the three. And somebody who spoke here in the last hour mentioned that I only addressed one of those. In fact, I addressed all three. The building height, we reduced from 2-story to 1. I explained why the grading can't be changed. Sorry, it's been a long evening.
Density was your third point.
That's correct. Thank you. Density, I also touched on the economics behind all of this, and explaining why with the fixed costs and the values that we're dealing with, we are requesting to stick with this same design. So we did address all three. We just only adjusted the plan in one of the categories. Number of folks are concerned about privacy and walls. Again, limiting the homes to single story does most of the work in addressing that. However, don't forget that these homes will be 70 to 80 feet from the existing homes, behind landscape screening, behind a 6-foot decorative screen wall. It won't be a fort with 12 to 18-foot walls like we heard. There'll be a landscape slope on the other side of the alley with a 6-foot decorative wall, and then the house will be set back further from that. So privacy concerns, although I appreciate them, will have been dealt with in this design. Home values, we also heard concerns about that. In fact of the matter is, the slide I had up here that showed recent sales, that's not my data. Those are actual sales, and the starting price for these homes will be above that average. And people nowadays typically spend 5 to 15% in addition to that starting price for upgrades. So I think it's reasonable to think that these homes are going to be selling on average for about $300,000, which will bring up the average value in the neighborhood. Traffic, I heard about that. The numbers that I quoted earlier in the evening are the peak rush hour generation numbers, the 36 and 49 per hour. Throughout the course of the day, there's obviously more, but those peak hours are really when everything, when the rubber hits the road, as it were. And so those are the times when the impact is greatest, and those numbers will not have a significant impact. It sounds to me like there are existing speeding and traffic control issues, especially it sounds like on Bonanza with the split road, there's some wrong way driving that is frequent. So that is an existing issue that needs to be addressed. I agree. Drainage we heard about again. We have to follow the city's drainage manual, and that means no impact to upstream or downstream owners. As I mentioned, there are no upstream owners for this property. They're all downstream because this is the high point. So the hydrologist engineer for this plan will not, they'll need to provide a design that demonstrates that there is no negative impact on any downstream owners. I've already explained the economics of the stockpile removal. Believe me, dirt is not an asset when you don't want it. When you need it, it costs money, and when you don't need it, it costs money. That's the way it works. So the figure that I offered, about $30,000 a lot to lower this site down to even grade, is entirely accurate. If this had been developed as a school as intended, that was the original plan for this. It was not planned to be a park. The impact would have been far greater. And this is a surplus TUSD site. There's a strong precedent for permitting smaller lots within established neighborhoods if steps are taken to increase compatibility. We've addressed what we believe we can. Happy to continue that conversation, but I do believe what we're proposing has taken good steps towards mitigating those concerns. We're happy to accept building height and landscape wall screening as conditions of rezoning approval. I think what this really comes down to is a fairly simple question. Plan Tucson clearly encourages this kind of infill development, and so will that plan be implemented? Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Oland, a couple of the speakers suggested that a continuance was in order. And let me just state for everyone present my view on that. As far as the zoning examiner process, this is kind of in essence a hearing. It's not just in essence a hearing. This is a hearing. I hear testimony on all sides of the issues, and then I make a recommendation to mayor and council, who make the final decision on all rezonings. If two parties come to a hearing and say, we'd like some more time to talk through the issues, then I almost always accommodate that joint request to give the parties more time to talk through the issues. But I don't involve myself, nor can I involve myself in resolving through negotiation those issues. Cases are presented to me, and I do my best to do what I think is correct under the Tucson Code and under all the applicable area plans and Plan Tucson. So I'm putting the question to you, Mr. Oland. Do you believe a continuance would be the right thing to do now, or do you want the case decided as submitted?
Well, I think just to clear the air, the right thing to do would be to continue this and have another meeting. I honestly don't think there's a lot of flexibility given the economics of this property and the surrounding area. But I'd rather have people feel like they were at least informed. And so if that's the direction this needs to go, we'll go along with that, sir.
All right, very well. Mr. Beal, can you tell us what date would be the best date to continue the hearing?
But Mr. Zoning Examiner, you have to continue, obviously, or can't go past 30 days. So let me take a look and see our calendar when there's a next meeting. So we have a meeting on the May 20th, there's May 27th, and then probably June 3rd.
So I can't do June 3rd, so let's pick May 27. That will give everyone who's interested in this a little more time than just 2 weeks. Mr. Olin, does May 27 work for you?
Yes, I'm trying to interpret my wife's notes on my calendar because there's a lot of graduation activity going on.
If the 20th would be better, I have that available also.
You know what, the 27th will work a lot better than the 20th, and that'll give us an extra week to have some more conversations. So let's just go with that.
I appreciate it. So I am not closing the hearing on this case C9-2103, but we're continuing the hearing to 6 p.m. on May 27th. And I want to thank everyone who participated tonight, and I hope continued information gets exchanged. And anyone who wants to join us on May 27 and others are welcome. I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.